All right, good morning, everyone. Really happy to be with you all. Whether you're here as a member of our Call to Come community 5 days a week, or you're tuning in via YouTube for our Wednesday multicast, it's great to be with you. If you are on YouTube, hit the bell button, like and subscribe. Head on over to the website and check it out. And super happy to have you. I think I've done pretty extensive job of highlighting where we are right now, what we're experiencing, what we're going through, the state of the union, as it were, or the state of consciousness as it's being interpreted by the individual. So I don't need to harp on about that. If there is anything that is still unclear, please feel free to revisit some of the monologues from this week and especially from last week to get some bigger context. The short version is, in December of last year, we had an in-person event, and I always begin to get a sense of what the next year has to offer us. And for me, the whole theme that kind of emerged from that was love in action, that we are at a point where we are loving ourselves, we're choosing ourselves, we're prioritizing ourselves, we're putting ourselves first. And that in fact, if there is any suffering in one's life, it is because that individual has not prioritized themselves, has not put themselves first. And I don't mean from a place of pain where it's almost this narcissistic form of self-interest that's rooted in pain or incompletion. I'm talking about putting yourself first from a place of love. Loving yourself means putting yourself first, doing things that are actionable on your behalf that demonstrate that love. I believe we live in a world, a society, and a culture where the words "I love you" have become throwaways and therefore have lost their meaning. And in order for love to have a meaning again, or an impact or a power in the modern world, it has to be actionable. I feel like we've gotten to a place where we are in this incessant need to search for greater, broader, and grander definitions of ourselves, which just further separate us from our fellow human beings. And instead of doing that, we can use language to bring us closer together, but we can also use language as an entry point into action. And after a while, you begin to realize that your acceptance and your embracing and your love of yourself has freed you of duality, separation, and suffering. Because in order for there to be duality, separation, and suffering, you have to be sourcing your entire experience of being a human being codependently from other people. Everyone else is a source of everything because you have been falsely identified or branded, or you have yourself accepted that you are a problem. Therefore, you are incomplete and you need everything from outside of you. The more you have accepted yourself, and the more you have loved yourself, the more you've embraced yourself, the more you've realized, in fact, that you are the solution. And the less you need love from other people, and whatever that even means, right? To what degree another person loves themselves, the less you need approval, the less you find belonging, the less you need stuff that you should really, honestly, in all clarity, be sourcing from within yourself. And so as a result, it's made it easier now for an empowered population of people, called the Calm Community, to walk away from things that aren't loving and to begin to determine, for the first time in human history, a life that's built upon a foundation of how you want to feel. A life that's built upon a foundation of how you want to feel, as opposed to what you need to look like, your self-image, the presentation of yourself, right? That's fragile and fickle and empty and vacuous, that you believed that you needed to deploy into the world in order to get some small fraction or fragment of love from somebody else. So the truth is that we've now come to the realization that other people are incapable of loving us, that they can only love us to the degree to which they love themselves, which we're discovering isn't very much at all. And that this creation of this identity, this persona, this personality, this holographic representation of ourselves in the matrix, in the simulation, in the Maya, in the illusion, this holographic representation no matter how much we craft it, we hone it, we work on it, we improve it, no matter how many modifications we make to it, it still doesn't elicit the result that we want the most from the people whose love we crave the most. It just doesn't. So after a while, you reach this inflection point. And the inflection point is that after 1,408 days, or 7 days, or 6 days, or 5 days, or 9 days, or 1,300 days of embracing and accepting yourself and hearing repeatedly that you're not broken, you don't have to be fixed, you don't have to be changed, you don't have to be improved. Actually, it's now time for you to start embracing and accepting yourself. You have now realized the futility of the pursuit. And the futility of the pursuit has been that if I keep workshopping myself, if I keep working on myself, if I keep bouncing around from one modality to the next, one guru to the next, then finally, at the level of self-image and identity, and the reason why I have it is because I have no fundamental awareness of who I am at the deepest level, which is why I have it. So having it in and of itself is an indication of a lack of self-love. I'm finally going to crack the code, and this person who doesn't love themselves is finally going to love me. Leave me a 1 or a yes in the chat if alarm bells are ringing this morning. So, how does this come into resolution? Well, it comes into resolution, as I've stated, throughout the last couple of days and through last week and about 47 years of my life, when we finally choose ourselves. So what does that mean? What does choosing yourself mean? Because for some of you, love is a very foreign experience. It's unfamiliar ground. Okay. You can't continue to prioritize the wellness, the health, the mental health, the financial health, and everything else of others over yourself. Okay? At some point, you have to prioritize your mental health, your physical well-being, your financial health, and every other manifestation of wellness, holistically defined wellness. You have to prioritize that. And why do you have to prioritize that? Because we live in a world where people don't love themselves. We live in a world where people don't even know that they have value. And this is why we're experiencing the systematic decay and decline of modern society. Because people don't understand their value. They don't understand their worth. There's a disconnect from a higher power, something beyond us. There's a disconnect from that. And there's a disconnect from that because the people who are creating these platforms and these technologies and these innovations have a fundamental, vehement disregard for this intelligence that is unfolding everything, everywhere, all at once. And the reason why they have that is because they are trying to fill that void. They're trying to step into that vacuum. So, and again, this is all just insecurity, a lack of value, a lack of self-awareness. So how does this serve us? I guarantee you right now that there are relationship dynamics in your life that don't feel good, that don't feel loving, that aren't kind, that aren't generous, that aren't respectful. And I also guarantee you, you're the one that's perpetuating them. And that's hard to hear because it's very convenient to take the posture of victim in this dynamic and to say, well, no, hang on a minute. It's so-and-so is constantly berating me, constantly treating me disrespectfully, constantly being abusive, constantly this and that. Yes. But at some point we have to realize that we're not the problem, that we're the solution, and that being the solution in this circumstance is that we find a very safe exit point out of the dynamic. And that is a manifestation of one's reclamation of personal power, of value, and of inner strength. And after a while, you realize the domino effect of that. So, we've been kind of living in this global societal experiment now for 1,409 days. And instead of following the rote manuscript of personal development, spiritual development, transformation, I realized a long time ago that that a human being had to start with the foundation of acceptance. And that foundation of acceptance eventually leads to love. But you have to start with acceptance. And actually that acceptance is the only way to pry oneself free of the addiction to self-image, what people think about you, how people see you, how people perceive you, the way they talk about you. And this is best epitomized or demonstrated by social media. This is why now we have children who feel like they don't even want to be alive anymore because they're not getting likes on social media platforms. Because it's all about your self-image. It's all about the image that you're presenting to the world, which is vacuous, which is empty, which is unsustainable, and which is an illusion, actually. But in the same way that our beloved youth and teenagers, and some of you who are older, quite frankly, who are still stuck in adolescence, are doing it to try and find some validation because you don't have value or worth inside of yourself, or you don't know who you are, or you don't accept or love yourself to the degree to which that you could. Because this is what's happening. People have been fundamentally distracted from what the ancients have known about us for millennia, that there is indeed some infinite intelligence, some power that is unfolding everything, and that in fact we are a part of that, and that our value comes from being a part of the infinite whole. It doesn't come from how other people perceive us. It doesn't come from this manufactured holographic image that we keep broadcasting into the world that isn't based in authenticity. It's not based in truth. So I'm saying all of this to say that you've been lying to yourselves to be loved by others. Leave me a 1RS in the chat if you can finally acknowledge that you have been lying to yourself in order to be loved by others. And that actually, when you love yourself, you no longer need to be loved by others. When you love yourself, you no longer need to be loved by others. Why? Because you've finally become the source of it. You're the source of it. You're the point of origin of it. So it doesn't matter what's happening on social media. It doesn't matter what's happening in family dynamics. It doesn't matter what's happening in the world. It doesn't matter what's happening outside of you. What matters is how you feel and the relationship, the lived experience that you want to have in your short time on this planet. What is the lived, felt experience of being human that I want to have? Do I want to wake up every day and be anxious and depressed and feel like my life has no value and therefore conclude that I may as well just not be here? Is that the lived experience that I want to have? Or do I want to have a lived experience where I love myself? I choose things that feel peaceful. I choose things that feel loving. I choose things that feel joyful, that affirm the beauty of what it means to be a human being, that affirm the beauty of life, like how wonderful this planet is that we live on, right? And so after a while, you have to recognize that in a world where everything has brainwashed you, hypnotized you, bamboozled you, and even used your biochemistry to hijack your mind, in a world where all of these things have happened, and they've happened on purpose, and now we have the empirical data and evidence, and we have the whistleblowers to prove this now, that human beings have been actually manipulated the level of dopamine to now conform to self-image and vacuous forms of interaction. Now, we have to realize that that is a world that doesn't advocate on behalf of us. That we are living in a lived experience of being human that is not indicative of our potential. That we are living in a world that does not advocate on behalf of us. It is not advocating on behalf of our well-being. It is not advocating on behalf of our longevity. It's not based in love. It's based in distraction, keeping you distracted, keeping you addicted, keeping you malleable, pliable, controllable, and dumbed down so that you just become docile and compliant and you just keep consuming. So the world, the version of the world that you're living in, doesn't work. It doesn't serve you. It is not in harmony with you. It never was. And yet you, God bless you, have been trying to find some sense of belonging and conformity and acceptance in a world that was fundamentally created to undermine you. Because you are living in a world that respects the external presentation and the identity and the holographic memory of somebody more than the truth of their heart. And this is why we are experiencing a fundamental systemic decay all over the world because people have lost sight of what's important. Ever since the pandemic, for 1,409 days, what we have done is cultivated a community here that every day on purpose remembers that peace is totally available, that we are peaceful, that this love that we're looking for is not outside of us, that it's inside of us, and that we actually have to source the truth of our experience from within ourselves, and that we can actually create a life and we can have a lived experience based on how we want to feel every day. But here's where it gets hard. Because your reality is not supportive of that, you have to get to a point where you don't care what you look like anymore. Because while you're still living for the approval of people who don't love themselves, while you're still living for the acceptance of people who are lost in addiction, lost in struggle, lost in human dysmorphia, lost in all kinds of isms and schisms, how can they ever love you? So it's not your fault, and you need to grant yourself a reprieve. But now you also have to step away from every dynamic that isn't peaceful, that isn't loving, and this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where the year of 2025 is so powerful. Thanks to the 1,409 days of acceptance and embracing that we have consciously engaged in on behalf of a planet of people that may never know that this was the foundation of how we return to self-love within our lifetime. Doesn't matter. We don't need them to know. We want to know how we feel. We want to know that we can have a lived experience that's loving, a lived experience that's peaceful, a lived experience that's harmonious, a lived experience that's life-affirming, Because that's a life worth living for. So this is the year where you've tolerated everything, where you've put up with everything, where you've allowed everything, where you've made excuses for everything. Now you have to choose yourself over your holographic representation in the matrix. You have to choose yourself over the feelings or the woundings of others. You have to choose yourself, and you have to throw caution to the wind and not care about what you look like, how you're perceived, or how other people interpret you. So here's what I'm going to say to you. I've shared all of this, and I want you to know that it's 100% possible. But now you have to love yourself enough to make it a reality for you. There's nothing I can do about that. And I know it's possible because we have people from all over the world, different races, different religions, different genders, different sexual orientations, different political beliefs and ideologies. The most diverse configuration of humans you could ever find that are now experiencing this. And they're experiencing it because they have been resting in the awareness of their breath. They're experiencing it because they have been accepting and embracing their humanity. You know, we have to be careful with this demonization of humanity. We have to be careful with falsely labeling human beings as the problem. What we have to do is recognize that there is inherently a value in being a human being, that human beings have done beautiful things, that we have uplifted each other, that we have inspired each other, that we have elevated each other, that we've created beautiful things, that to be human is to be beautiful. And that you, in fact, have this innate beauty within you that wants to be liberated in the form of some creativity, some expression, some sentiment, something that you put forth into the world. But now you see it's incumbent upon you, right? And this is where the rubber meets the road. You have to be willing to walk away from everything that isn't loving. You have to be willing to walk away from everything that isn't peaceful. You have to be willing to walk away from everything that isn't in harmony with you. And this is where now I'm noticing that people who have been coming to Call to Calm no longer feel alone in these points where they're experiencing a divergence in their journey. Now they feel the presence of this community with them. And because of the presence of this community, now they're able to actually advocate on behalf of themselves in a way that they could not before. So what we have is a blueprint for how people can move beyond the grasp, the clutches of duality and separation, which is everything all of you have been talking about. In a personal development context, you've wanted sovereignty, you've wanted personal empowerment. Well, here it is. In a spiritual context, you've wanted liberation, you've wanted to know the true meaning of freedom. Well, here it is. So now we have a practical way to access that that's been simplified and made available to every single human being, as it is this morning. But are you going to make the most of it? Is this just going to be another YouTube video or another call to calm monologue? Or are you actually going to hear me? In order for you to love yourself, you have to determine how you want your lived experience of being a human being to feel. You have to determine that. You have to determine that for yourself. And then you have to allow that lived experience that you want to be your North Star. And that means now that you have to do the part that's hard. You have to walk away from everything that's abusive, everything that's disrespectful, everything that isn't kind, everything that's demeaning, everything that isn't supportive. You have to walk away from it. You have to reclaim your value. You have to do it. And you see, every day I show up knowing that everybody will hear me, but very few people will actually make this actionable. Very few people will commit to it. Of the percentage of people who hear me, a handful of people will actually use it. And here's what's happened. For the people who have, it's almost like they're living in another dimension of being human. That they're having a lived experience of being human that's fundamentally totally different than the one they had before Call to Calm. And here's the funny thing. You're not being empowered in being somebody other than you. It's not some technique, some modality, some doctrine, my interpretation of what life should be like. You're for the first time ever just being empowered in yourself as a human being and realizing that actually on a spiritual level there was nothing missing in any of you. You can't teach spirituality. That's ridiculous. Nobody needs anything at the level of spirit or soul or being. You've all been invalidating yourselves at the level of your humanity. And spirituality has been complicit in your self-invalidation, as has personal development. So you have to get to a place where the transformational space is not transforming you. And you have to get to a place of truth and honesty with yourself, that you've been doing something for 30, 40, 50 years, and it doesn't work. And it doesn't work because you've been focusing on the wrong thing. At some point, you have to get to a place where you realize, okay, hang on a minute. If indeed there is this infinite intelligence, if indeed there is this wonderful organizing principle that's making everything happen, well, then I have to be a part of that because I am, in fact, a part of nature, a part of creation. So then by extension, I'm a part of that. Well, if I'm a part of it, then there has to be some fundamental reason why I am the way I am. And now it's up to me to accept myself the way I am, to embrace myself the way I am, and to allow for the emergence of what people all over the world have allowed for the emergence of. This deeper, more mystical, transcendent quality or aspect of themselves that was always inherently there, that they were depriving themselves the experience of. It's time, my fellow human beings, to stop having a codependent relationship with yourself. Nobody's going to enlighten you. Nobody's going to empower you. Nobody's going to love you. Nobody's going to make you abundant. Nobody's going to advocate on behalf of you. They can't do it because they don't have it within themselves. That's the truth. This is your life to live, and you get to determine your lived experience of being a human being. And all I can say to you is please don't waste your time. Don't. This human thing is it's just over so quickly. Please don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. Please don't waste your time. After a while, you have to stop caring about what other people think about you, what you look like. And you have to start giving that attention and that energy to yourself and determining how you want to feel every day. You have to live with yourself. If that sounds great, well, we have a way. But you have to want it. And not only do we have a way, but we have a way that works. But you have to love yourself enough to say yes to it. Thanks for listening. Laurel. Stop typing. Om Shanti heart emoji. Day 1409 of Call to Calm. All right, close your eyes and open your palms. Good morning, sweet friends, and welcome to another Call to Calm meditation. At some point, you have to stop caring about how you're perceived by other people, and you have to take all of that energy and time and all of your resources that you have deployed to try and become the best holographic representation of yourself, or to become the version of you that you believe other people need you to be in order to be liked and loved and fit in and belong, etc. And you have to take all of that energy and all of that attention and all of those resources and begin to cultivate a life that is based on a feeling, the feeling that you wish to have, which becomes your lived experience every day. At some point, you have to choose yourself. And at some point, you have to choose your heart. And that time is now. Because I can tell you that this is the year where the rubber meets the road. You don't really have a choice, you see. Everywhere where you are not prioritizing yourself, where you're not advocating on behalf of yourself, all of these things are going to start blowing up all around you. Because where we are now, collectively, is we're living in an age of personal empowerment. It's no longer about intermediaries and go-betweens and people who we've designated as somehow having more than us and just acquiescing everything that we have to them and deferring everything to them. We know how that works out. It never works out well. We've done that enough. But what we haven't done as a species-wide phenomenon, or a thought experiment, or a lived experiment of life and living, is we haven't focused on what happens when we accept and embrace ourselves and we choose to build a life on a feeling, love, peace, whatever we want. And we allow everything to become a reflection of that felt, lived experience of love or peace. After a while, you begin to realize that what you want is just not coming from outside of you. You're not going to get it. People are incapable of giving it to you. And sometimes you get there very painfully. Sometimes it's very painful as to how you come to that realization. But you will. You'll realize, just like hundreds of thousands of people like you are realizing right now, that in fact you're not the problem, you're the solution. And that now it's time to be that solution. Close your eyes, you beautiful, wonderful human beings, and open your palms. Resting in the awareness of your breath, transforms your life into a living meditation. Becoming aware of your every inhalation and exhalation. this morning, with your every breath, coming into the complete and total acceptance of yourself. The way you feel, your emotional landscape, the way you think, the beliefs, the mind, the body, everything. And continuing to embrace the possibility that in fact you too are a part of this perfect design that is life, that is nature, that is creation. And that maybe instead of spending all of your time trying to get rid of yourself, living in some reductionist relationship with your humanity, maybe that time and that energy would be better spent being inclusive of yourself, embracing and nurturing of yourself, your humanity, who you are, how you are. And with your every inhalation and exhalation, literally seeing every connection, every single relationship dynamic, every work dynamic, every financial dynamic, every thing that contributes to your well-being, shifting into this felt inner experience of peace. I want to have a peaceful relationship with myself. I choose to have a peaceful relationship with myself. So I'm going to build my life, my inner felt, lived experience of being human. I'm going to construct it on a foundation of peace. And I am going to love myself, and I'm willing to love myself enough to walk away from everything that is not peaceful in my life. It is ironic that so often in life we think that we have to move, that we have to start again. Every American pioneer who settled this country did so in the belief that they were fleeing oppression and restriction and limitation upon their freedom. Unbeknownst to them, they were riding off with a horse and a carriage into the most violent, barbaric, untenable situation any human being could ever imagine in order to find this freedom. So it is not searching for liberty, searching for freedom. It is uncovering it within oneself. What you want is a lived experience of being human that feels peaceful. What you want is a lived experience of being human that feels loving, that feels joyful. And the only person that has the power to bring that into being is you. So seeing yourself today, walking away from everything and everyone that is not loving, that is not kind, that is not peaceful, that is not respectful, that is not in alignment with this inner experience that you wish to have. And knowing that life, in its infinite benevolence, will begin to send you experiences and people that are. So today, I choose myself, I choose my heart, I choose peace, and I am no longer willing to tolerate or perpetuate any dynamic or any situation that is not congruent with this peace and this love that I wish to cultivate within myself every day. I grant myself the gift of love. I grant myself the lived, felt experience of my enlightenment. I grant myself the gift of grace. I grant myself the gift of everything that I've been trying to get from everyone around me. And I retire this holographic representation of myself, this paper mache version of me that I've put together based on everyone else's expectations and assumptions. I choose myself. I choose peace. I choose my heart. And I love myself enough to leave everyone and everything behind. Yay. Just take some breaths. Just notice how you feel. Just notice how you feel. Freedom is here if you want it. Enlightenment is here if you want it. Liberation is here if you want it. Love is here if you want it. Peace is here if you want it. Abundance is here if you want it. Everything that you could ever want is here. You just haven't been allowing yourself to have it. You've been waiting for some winged being to fall out of the sky to bop you on your head and finally deem you worthy of what was already inherently present within you. At some point, you have to realize that you're the source of the love, that you're the source of the peace, that you get to determine what your lived experience feels like every day. And we know it works, because hundreds of thousands of people like you have made their way to Call to Calm, and it's worked for them. So we know it works. At some point, you have to love yourself enough to commit to it. At some point, you have to prioritize it to the same degree that you prioritize turning yourself inside out and bending yourself into every possible form like a contortionist into a pretzel in order to be loved by everyone else. And when you do, you begin to discover that all of a sudden one day you'll just wake up peacefully, and you'll stay that way. You'll wake up with this real experience of love in your heart, and you'll stay that way. Today's Wednesday. We've got a group alignment session. What is that? Well, it's an opportunity to make all of this actionable. Call to Calm came into being at the height of the global pandemic, and I realized that people would need some more individual support in terms of themselves and their lives, but not everybody could come to actually do an individual session, so I reinstated group sessions. People can come and receive what they need on an individual level in a group. So that sounds like something that you'd like to do, and that sounds like something that's feasible or loving. Come. Also, there are a multitude of different ways to distract yourself from who you are. And even working on yourself has become the biggest distraction. People have gotten stuck in analysis, understanding, the cultivation of awarenesses, and there has not really been much follow-through or actualization at all. Because there has been a lack of self-advocacy. So if you really want to know what freedom is, and you really want to know what it means to be empowered, choose yourself. Choose your heart. And advocate on behalf of that. Prioritize that. And have the courage to leave behind everything that isn't that. Because that's exactly what you're going to have to do. Wishing you all a wonderful Wednesday. Above and beyond all things, be true to yourself. Be true to your heart. And know that you are loved. Take care, YouTube. May the algorithm be kind and bless you with this content. May you hear this and be freed from the illusion. Call to Calmers, love you as always, and I will see you tomorrow for another Call to Calm monologue meditation and another wonderful opportunity to prioritize yourself, to choose yourself, and to once again realize that you can have a lived, felt experience of being human that is peaceful, and that is loving, and that is kind. Bye-bye, everybody.